Hello everyone, welcome to Diplomatic Brief. In Japan, the ruling Liberal Democratic Party has elected a new president. Takashi Sanemiya won in the second round of voting, defeating Shinjiro Koizumi with 185 votes to 156. The Japanese parliament is expected to hold a procedural vote on October 15th to elect the new prime minister. Although the current ruling coalition of the Liberal Democratic Party and Komeito has not secured a majority in the House of Representatives, the three major opposition parties, the Constitutional Democratic Party, the Japan Innovation Party, and the Democratic Party for the People, the opposition parties have not been able to reach a consensus on jointly nominating a candidate for prime minister. So, barring any surprises, Takashi Sanemiya is set to become Japan's new prime minister, and will also be the country's first female prime minister. On the same day, when responding to questions from foreign media, a spokesperson for China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said they had taken note of the election results, emphasizing that this is an internal affair of Japan. They expressed hope that Japan will adhere to the principles and consensus outlined in the four political documents between China and Japan, and honor its political commitments on major issues such as history and Taiwan. They hope Japan will pursue a proactive and rational policy towards China, and fully implement the positioning of a strategic and mutually beneficial relationship. From China's response, you can see it's quite restrained. Firstly, that's because Takashi Sanemiya holds extremely conservative views. Takashi is a staunch supporter of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and a firm inheritor of Abe's policies. Some even call her Abe's foreign minister. Kyodo News describes her as a fickle conservative who follows Abe's line. When it comes to China-Japan relations, Takashi has repeatedly She has visited the Yasukuni Shrine, denied the history of the Nanjing massacre, promoted the China threat theory, and has repeatedly challenged Beijing's red line on the Taiwan issue. In terms of foreign relations, she emphasizes strengthening the Japan-US alliance. You could say she's a typical anti-China, pro-America Japanese politician. However, for Takashi, her biggest challenge is that the Liberal Democratic Party has suffered consecutive setbacks in both houses of the National Diet, with obvious internal divisions and fierce electoral competition. After taking office as prime minister, she will face the predicament of leading a ruling coalition with only a minority in power, and her future is still uncertain. Kai Chang, an assistant researcher at the Northeast Asia Research Center of Shanghai Political Science and Law Institute, wrote on the Mainland's Observer website before the election that regardless of who ultimately wins, under the broader context of China-US strategic competition and the trend of conservatism within Japan, it will be difficult to change the tough stance of Japan's China policy. China-Japan relations are likely to continue facing challenges. However, at present, Japan is actually facing more diplomatic challenges from its traditional ally, the United States. Due to the tariff war stirred up by Trump, even though Japan and the US have reached a trade agreement that significantly lowers tariffs on Japanese cars and auto parts from the original 27.5% to 15%, the Japanese government has, in black and white, agreed to invest $550 billion in the US. The decision-making power over this investment will be highly concentrated on the American side. The U.S. president will have the final say over the investment projects, and if Japan refuses to fund any of the selected projects, it will face the risk of new tariffs imposed by the U.S. The Japanese auto industry also generally believes that, as a result of the U.S.-Japan trade agreement, even though the tariff on Japanese car exports to the U.S. has been reduced to 15%, it is still too high. Another key point to note is that the dominant power over this $550 billion investment is entirely in the hands of the U.S. As for Japan, which is in a relatively weak position, the question of where the money will come from has also become a major challenge. But no matter what, with Kishida Fumio becoming Japan's prime minister, there will be new twists and turns in China-Japan relations. Of course, China will continue to move forward according to its own strategic goals. This includes continuing to expand regional economic cooperation with Latin America. On September 30th, the 31st regular meeting of the Andean Community Council of Foreign Ministers was held in Bogota. At the meeting, it was unanimously decided to officially accept China as an observer of this organization. Zhang Liping, the charge d'affaires ad interim of the Chinese embassy in Colombia, was invited to attend the meeting and spoke on behalf of China. The member states all expressed that China has always played an important role in the international community and global governance. China's becoming an observer of the Andean community is of great historical significance. They look forward to using this to promote cooperation between both sides, advance regional economic integration and sustainable development, and better safeguard the common interests of developing countries. Zhang Liping praised the Andean community's decision to accept China as an observer state and stated that China is willing to work together with Latin America to implement this. He mentioned the 5 major projects of the China-Latin America community with a shared future, which will open up a new pattern of bilateral and multilateral cooperation, further benefiting the people on both sides. During an interview, Zhang Liping talked about the importance and promising prospects of cooperation between China and the Andean community. The Andean community is not a large regional organization. Its members include Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, and Colombia. Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, and Chile are also connected in some way. Spain, Morocco, Turkey, Greece, Panama, and China? China is an observer country. China is strengthening its cooperation with the Andean community, among which Peru plays the most important role. A large port invested by Chinese enterprises, Chancay Port, has been established in Peru. After diplomatic efforts, Peru withstood pressure from the United States, allowing this deep-water port in South America with a direct route to Shanghai to begin operations, having a direct shipping line between China and Latin America. The most important thing is that this route can operate without passing through Panama. If the western region of South America can be connected to Peru by land, then there's no need to worry about the U.S. controlling the Panama Canal choke point. Although China and Latin American countries are very protective of their own interests, as the world's second-largest economy and the largest trading nation, China's cooperation with Latin America has deepened in recent years, especially through the Belt and Road Initiative, which has further linked China with countries in the global south. However, the United States has always been. It's their backyard, and the U.S. has deep-rooted connections in Latin America. For China, it's not easy to maintain stable relations and promote normal cooperation with Latin America. Recently, Colombian President Petro revealed that he had replaced the diplomats at the Colombian embassy in China and accused them of undermining relations with China. On September 30th, Petro made these remarks during a speech to his ministers. He said that there was a group in Colombia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs who felt ashamed about engaging with China, and that they were damaging Colombia's relationship with China. All these people, he said, must step down and leave. Petro also mentioned that during his visit to China this spring, diplomats at the embassy in China had changed his itinerary without permission and even canceled meetings and events. Regarding the actions of his country's diplomats in China, he sternly pointed out that this had nothing to do with humanity. As for colonialism, Petro? The reshuffling of diplomats at the Chinese embassy happened in Colombia after the country joined China's Belt and Road Initiative this May. This decision also marked Colombia breaking away from decades of obedience to the United States. On May 12 this year, the Colombian Presidential Office issued a statement saying that President Petro confirmed their country would join China's Belt and Road Initiative. On May 14th, during Petro's visit to China, the two heads of state jointly witnessed the signing of a cooperation plan between the government of the People's Republic of China and the government of the Republic of Colombia on jointly advancing the Silk Road Economic Belt and the 21st Century Maritime Silk Road. The Colombian Ministry of Foreign Affairs described this agreement between Colombia and China as a historic step, saying it would bring investment, technology transfer, and although some people in Colombia are worried that such construction projects might jeopardize Colombia's tens of billions of dollars in trade with the United States, and establishing closer ties with China could break this pattern. He has consistently emphasized Colombia's colonial dependence on the United States. From the details Petro revealed, there are a few observations. First, among the officials and elites in many Latin American countries are deeply influenced by the United States. Take Colombia as an example. Officials from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs can unilaterally change the president's schedule, and meetings have shown that the anti-China forces within the country are not insignificant. However, with China's status as the world's largest trading nation, it has also expanded cooperation with Latin America. Now, as an observer of the Andean community, China can further strengthen its ties with Latin America. Third, Trump's image of squeezing money from allies has already taken root in the minds of many officials in developing countries. In Latin America, when leaders adopt an anti-American stance, their popularity actually rises. Besides Petro, Brazil's President Lula also took a tough stand during Trump's tariff war. This shows that the situation in America's backyard, Latin America, has changed. If the U.S. wants to maintain a tight grip on the region, it's going to face a lot of difficulties.